Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, how are we getting on? In today's video we're going to take a look at 4 camps using the new prefabs that Bethesda have added to Fallout 76 recently, and have a look at how we can use those to build 4 very easy to blueprint movable camps. So let's jump in and take a look, shall we? Okay, so we're in the same place we were last week, just south of the Nuka-Cola plant here, on the western side of the map, just north of Camden Park. Short jaunt down the road. Charleston just over this way. So I decided to stay here because it's a nice, reasonable spot. It's reasonably flat, it's open, it's a good spot as any for doing this. So, we've got 4 of the recent additions via the Atomic Shop. We've got the train car, the Red Rocket Station, the Seedy Shed there, and the log cabin. All of which make for pretty good movable camps. So, going to be very decoration heavy here because we need to keep everything contained within the structures to make sure that we can actually blueprint and move them easily enough. So, let's get cracking. So, I want to achieve having everything you really need inside the one building if possible. With the Seedy Shed it's not, we're going to do several little buildings, but with the Red Rocket, a lot of people go for something that is based on the loading screen, the main title screen from Fallout 4, and stick that power armor station in the middle. There's a few variations because the building's not quite the same, but we're going to go with a slight twist on that. Plus it'll give us a little extra room to squeeze everything in. So, tuck a little cooking station in the corner here. Decided to go with the small one on the top. Even though you're going to end up sort of floating in midair when you use it, it just looks a little different. So you can actually use the fire flamethrower trap, that's the one, to make sure that to glitch a normal cooking station inside of that unit if you want to. But ultimately I think this looks better and it's a simpler technique as well, so we'll go with that. So we have a limited space, so I need to make sure that I'm using the space in the middle here to its fullest advantage, otherwise we're not going to be able to cram everything in. So couple of workbenches back sticking out from the wall, and we'll get some stash box in here and a few other bits and pieces just to add a bit of decoration. Drop a steel table in because it fits with the garage style a bit more and the workshop style. Drop a stash box on the top there, a few extra bits and pieces to add a little bit of detail. Always good to have a lamp around. And I think we need a radio because what garage will be complete without one? And there we go. So, up next, we're going to add a few bits and pieces around the bed for our sleeping area. Stick a chair in there. Yeah, with one I don't use very often, but in this particular place, a kind of rough, dirty-looking chair kind of fits in with everything else. Power armor station is probably the cleanest thing in here, actually. Unfortunately, rugs don't work quite so well in here. They tend to clip a bit through the floor, so I decided not to do that one. We're going to need a little bedside cabinet of some kind. A stash box does quite nicely for that. It's one of the ones from Nuclear Winter. Got a little bit of lighting and wall decor on the go here. I'm going to put a few of these illuminated posters that I am so fond of up on the wall. And mix them up. We're going to stick with the pin-ups for this one because, well, it's a garage and it's just kind of in keeping with that vibe. Tiny bit on the stereotypical side maybe, but it does look good. Stick a motorbike one in there, why not? Weirdly, when I've put it here, for some strange reason this is actually sitting on the edge of the weapons bench there, rather than being connected to the wall, which is a bit odd, but it works, so I'm not going to worry about it. If you are concerned, you can always make sure you pull that weapons bench out and then put it back once you've got the poster in. So I want to tweak this ever so slightly because we're going to need some power in here. So we're going to pull this larger table out and replace it with a small one. Yep. And I'll just drop that on the top there. Get rid of that, eventually. There we go. That radio could stay where it is. I would probably have moved it, but I slightly forgot. But it'll do fine there. So we're going to put a couple of these Voltec generators down, which are well worth picking up if you get a chance, because they're nice and quiet, and they don't pump smoke out, which is also a bonus. Note for this particular set of builds, if you're going to stack these up like this, make sure you don't go more than 2 high, and make sure you manually position the top one. Don't just leave it wherever it snaps. Because if you do, as we're going to see a little later on, you'll find you can't actually replace the camp once it's blueprinted. Unfortunately, you'll think it's floating. So As I say, make sure you don't go more than too high, and make sure you manually position the top one, and that should avoid that problem. So I'll get a couple of conduits in here, just tidy up these wires a bit. I don't like them trailing too much. I'm going to run them out to the centre, because I want to put a vending machine in here. Now with the limited space, you could squeeze two in back to back, sort of like the workbenches there, but I like the look of just one a little bit better, and it creates a little bit more room to move around, because especially once we've got the door in here, there's not a great deal of room to get past this thing, so one is probably the best for now. Unfortunately, we're building small, well, this small in particular. A few corners have to be cut, a few sacrifices do have to be made, but the result is a nice packed looking build that's going to look pretty lived in, pretty cool, and will also be highly portable, so best of both worlds with these. I do like to have a little bit of something on the bed, rather than having no covers on there whatsoever, so sleeping bag's the only option we've got, so we'll stick an extra one of those on the top. Little lamp beside the bed. Nice. There we go. So, a couple more bits and pieces just to decorate this place out. Little Nika girl on the vending machine. I'll stick a flag, just fill this little blank stretch of the wall here. Just about fits. And we've got another blank stretch of wall here, so fire breather shield. And I recently picked up via the Legendary Run, the Season Pass, the awesome, ridiculously huge Sheepsquatch plushie. So, we're going to have to change the chair out now, because I need somewhere for him to sit. So, he will fit just about on this red chair here. He's technically floating a little bit, but that is sufficiently cool that I was quite willing to overlook the floating. But we're going to jump up to the top now, because this red rocket requires power itself, the gas station itself. So we're going to drop just one little generator up here, because you only need 3 power. Connect it up the top there, just behind the sign. Now the rocket pumps smoke out, and as we'll see later on, the sign is also illuminated as well. This door is a little bit awkward to get in. It's actually under the wall tab. The original garage door won't fit here, it's too big, so you have to use the red rocket one, but it is supplied with a pack. And there we go. So, we'll blueprint this, select the whole structure, create a new blueprint. This is actually the second time I did this, because initially I couldn't get that door in at all. It was too close to the edge of the build area, so I had to blueprint it, move the whole thing back, and then add the door. But success has been achieved. There we go. Whole thing moved, placed back down again, no problems. So, build number 2. We're going to have a look at the train car. Now, this is going to be in some ways quite similar to what a lot of other people have done when they're trying to build just using this particular piece. The obvious reason for that being that it's tiny, you've only got so much space, you really have to do something in this sort of a vibe to make it work, especially if you want to fit everything in here. However, we did manage to squeeze 2 of these in, so nice on the vending front. We'll take them as far forward as we possibly can, and it's going to be kind of a theme for filling this place up. You need to make sure everything is as close to the walls and as close together as you can get it, so you can cram as much in as possible. Which is challenging on occasion. Moving things around in a small space can be a bit problematic, but it does mean you've got a much more lived-in look, which is always good. Much more complete-looking camp. So we'll get a few workbenches down the far end. I'm actually going to tweak this in just a moment, because I want to make sure I can squeeze a power armor station in this. 3 out of 4 on the power armor stations here, which I'm quite pleased with. There's one, unfortunately, I couldn't quite fit a power armor station even in, but this one we will manage in a moment. Drop a bed in, drop a cooking station in. Again, that bed needs shifting ever so slightly closer to the vendors. There's a little bit more room to move it up, but it does work. Like I say, we've got to make the best use of that space. So my first thought was to put this power armor station on the side, but I don't like the fact it's on a rug, and it's just taking up a bit too much room there. So we're going to pull all these workbenches out a bit, move them around, and squeeze this power armor station in down the end, which would have been much easier to do if I put it in first. But what can you do? So I've gone for this particular spindlier version of the weapons workbench, as I did in last week's build, because it just fits in the gap a little better. So it's really a case of squeezing it in where we can. As we will see with this armor bench, which I was really glad this worked, a little bit of clipping on the pipe there for the bellows, but you can squeeze it in down the side of the armor workbench and still the power armor workbench rather, and still access it from the side, which is cool. So limited space with the weapons workbench, so that won't unfortunately tuck quite in there. There's not quite enough room to do that because the legs stick out. But a little bit further up, that'll do fine. Make sure it's as close to the wall as I can get it. And we'll drop another stash box in the corner and add a little bit of decoration just to flesh it out a little bit. And we'll tweak that a bit because I want to make sure it looks like the drawer can actually open. Push back. There we go. Nudge this along a little bit more. And make sure it's straight because it wasn't quite straight either. Something else is well worth keeping an eye on if you're building in a train car, because once it catches your eye that something's not quite straight, it'll drive you nuts if you're anything like me. It'll just be that one thing that's not quite right. So, got those in position. We're going to get a table in here. Drop a chair over there, seeing as I found one. We'll go with this wooden one, as it's basically my favourite, and it fits in the gap quite nicely. Unfortunately, can't push that chair all the way under the table, but we'll get it as close as we possibly can. Make sure it's in the middle. Oh, that's as good as it's going to get. Still enough room to get past it, that's the main thing. Drop the stash box in. And a little bit of lighting, and a radio, I think, as well. No, we just skip straight to the more lights. So, a little bit more knocking around, so we need a little bit of illumination here. Don't worry about those two boxes there, we'll be taking those out in a minute. So that should provide enough light for this place, especially once we've got a bit of wall decor in here as well. Poster in there, just to fill up the middle a bit. It won't be too bright at night in here, but it should be nice and cosy. Got a few little more odds and ends scattered around the build, just to make sure it's fully fleshed out, looks plenty busy enough. So if the more things you've got put in, the more little bits and pieces, the more lived in, the more complete the place is going to look. Build small, decorate a lot. So, I'll stick a few plushies on here, which is actually kind of going to get in the way of using the bed, but it looks cool, so why not? Take the three little ones we've got, tuck them in the corner. Here we go, nice. And we'll stick the big one in because it's brand new and I'm kind of obsessed with it. So, last couple of bits of space on the wall, we're going to stick some weapon racks up there so we can display some weapons. Unfortunately, when you blueprint and replace your camp, the displays, like the weapon racks, tend to clear, so you'll have to manually reassign things to them. So I forgot to do that, but there we go. It works. It's the main thing. Squeeze a flag in over the door. Nice, only just fits, but it does work. So, the reason I'm taking these boxes out is because my original plan was to put the generators on the other end of the train car to the door. There's a little bit of space out there, and obviously that door at that end doesn't open. However, that does mean you can't get the wires inside. So, with the vendors inside, we're going to need power on the inside of the build. So, they got moved inside, and they're going to form a kind of impromptu headboard for the bed there. We have to shuffle things along just a little bit to make sure I've got room for the wire there. Still doesn't want to play ball, so I'll tweak it a little bit. There we go. And get some conduits up on these walls just so I can run it neatly around. Got to avoid those trailing wires. Little bit of lag on the server there. One more in the middle, just keep it nice and square. Go. So, that's a little bit wonky, so we'll flip those generators around in just a moment. There we go. Come on. Always a bit difficult in the tight space like that, but we manage. Still a little wonky. That's better. Run these all the way around. And I'm not going to wire it up just now, mostly because I don't want people turning up. So we'll tweak that back so it's a little closer to the generator, so it's a little bit more central. Straighten that up a little bit. Remember to put this lamp back. Come on, there we go, spotted it now. And there we go. And that basically is that. We just need a door on the place. So we're going to go with the very cool sliding doors that come with the train car. This one being part of the Slocum's Joe pack was released the other week, by the way. As opposed to the Red Rocket, which is standalone. Personally think these are well worth grabbing if you get the chance to pick them up. They're very, very cool. So, we'll blueprint this one. Here we go. We have to take the door off in order to scrap it. Not necessary if you're moving camps, but seems we're staying here for the moment. Now let's just test this. Grain cart, there we go. Spin it around. When I decide where I want it, there we go. Nice and easy. Job's a good one. So, number 3. We're going to have a look at the log cabin. Now, I was fairly convinced here that I was going to need a second log cabin, and if you want to have a few extra vending machines and a power armor workstation, you probably will need to use 2. But for this one, I actually didn't do that. So it came out quite well, and we were able to squeeze everything into the one, which is cool. Get some rugs down, make it look a little more homely. Always a good place to start when you're decorating. Actually ended up just going for the one in the sort of bedroom sitting portion of the space. But we'll shift these around a bit first. And we've got to drop these workbenches in. We have to rearrange them a little bit to make sure everything fits. So I'm going to pull this out of the way. Push that armor bench into the corner because it takes up a little bit less room. Yeah. Too far back there. And I'm sure you figured out where we're going with this. We're going to turn the corner here using the chemistry bench. There we go. Push it up against the wall. So fiddle with it a fair bit to make sure it's lined up and even, because it's kind of hard to see when you're standing back a bit from it, so a couple of angles are required. And then we'll make sure this Tinker's bench on the right lines up flush with the back of the chemistry bench, so a nice straight line there. A little bit of clipping there and not quite straight. That's a bit better. And we'll just line these two up. Like I say, I want that Tinker's bench flush with the back of the chemistry bench so it looks smooth when you're on this side of it. So with those in place, and a little more fiddling to be done, we're going to test them. Because in a confined space like this, sometimes, as you can see here, the animation just won't play, which means you can't use the workbench. So all the others are fine, but I can't quite get at that weapons workbench. The animation needs a little bit more room, so we're going to have to nudge everything back a little bit. You can see I've pulled that rug out as well, because I'm going to have the kitchen in that corner, and I don't really want carpet underneath it. So we'll pull this back just a little bit further, so I've got access to that weapons workbench. Sit quite snugly, which is nice. There we go. Job's a good one. So, kitchen space. I've just realised there was a slight oversight in this. I didn't put a sink in here. Mind you, there's one on the chemistry bench, so I suppose it's not the end of the world. So, cooking station in the corner, and I want a little table in here as well. Didn't quite like it there, so we're going to sit next to the cooking station. Need some kind of work surface. The table can double up as a space to eat and prep. And as I said last time, it's always a good idea to make sure you remember to put the curtains in first. Unfortunately, I didn't, so we'll be shifting those around in a moment. But we're going to drop the bed in, put it on the side there because I like the look a little bit better. It's lined up. Try and avoid it clipping into the wall too much. There we go. Need somewhere to chill out, so sofa next to it. There we go. Figured out the curtain thing. So we'll have to whip this table and the cooking station rather out, so we've got enough room to put the curtains in. Yep. Nice. Now I did put them back in the other way around. Unfortunately, however, once again, I can no longer access this cooking station. As you see here, the animation just won't play. So we'll have to swap those back over again. Chair out of the way. Did try just adjusting it, see if I could make that tiny little bit of extra room you need, but unfortunately we're just a little bit too far over to the left to make this work, so we'll put it up against the curtains. I don't really like having it against the curtains. It's looks a little bit too much like you're going to set them on fire, and it doesn't sit quite as close as I'd like though. See the ladle on the top there is just pushing that bounding box just a little bit too far over, but it's a whole lot better than not being able to use it at all, so that's where it's going to have to go. Just tweak this table as we slide it back into place. Another tight squeeze to get it in that gap, but it does fit, just about. There we go, much better. So, chair back into place. I'm going to put it on an angle, so it's just a little more aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to use this ice cooler, icebox thing, just as a combination of its intended function and as a sort of coffee table, I suppose, beside the sofa there. And I'm going to drop another coffee table in here that I'm going to put a radio on, because I want something to break up the back of the workbench there, Tinker's bench. It's just a little too exposed, and it's a little bit of an eyesore, really. So putting a few bits in front of it just kind of distracts from that, because there's more going on. I'm going to stick an alarm clock down on top of this icebox, which unfortunately is the wrong way around. If you flip it around like this, I can then put it at the back, because I don't want it sticking out of the front edge. So one side it will sit on properly, whereas if you've got it on the other end, it just kind of sinks in a bit. It'll still place, but it doesn't look very good when it's sinking in. So little adjustment required there. And we have one last gap to fill up. So we're going to squeeze just the one vending machine in here. Again, unfortunately not too much room. As I say, if you want to put extra vending machines and a power armor station in, you're probably going to need to use the second shack. Second prefab of some type anyway. But without that, we've managed to squeeze everything else in, which I'm quite pleased about. Just get that tucked in as close into the corner as I can. Tidy up that generator. Hook a conduit on the wall just so that it doesn't clip through. In fact, I don't think the wire will clip through. I think the angle is just too steep there. So, wire up. Just that, because it's not straight enough for my liking. It's a bit of a pain to do with these wooden walls, but there we go, close enough. And we'll get some stuff on the walls. So, as we've got a log cabin, we're going to have to go with the skiing Appalachia mountainous region vibe for the decorations we're going to go for on the wall. So we've got the skiing sign there. The mining region sign, so that's very Appalachia as well. And a little mountain scene there. Once I move the lamp that's getting in the way. Nice. There we go. Stick a lamp on the top of this, just because. There we have it. One nice, packed and livable little cabin. And we get rid of the second one because we don't really need it. So, we'll stick a door on and then blueprint and test this thing. Now, if you would like to put stairs on this, if you have a look at the previous log cabin build I did, which is actually quite similar to this, although with a bit more added on the outside, I did demonstrate technique in there where you can set up a set of stairs so that they're just sort of on their own without being snapped to a foundation, and then you can move the build nice and close to it. But I'll link that one in the top corner if you want to check out how to do that. There we go. Blueprinted and replaced nice and easy. So the last build of the day is going to look at the Seedy Shed, or specifically 3 of them, which is actually the maximum number we can build. If you have a look underneath the component name on the right there, it has a limit of 3, and that is also shared with things like the train car and the red rocket stop, so something to bear in mind there. So if 3's our limit, 3 we'll go with. We'll start off with a little living space. Get a rug down, make it a bit more cosy. Get a bed in the corner. I like these bunk beds largely because they don't take up too much room, but they also don't feel too small either. Strike a good balance there. Also got a nice little bit of height as well, which kind of makes the place feel a bit more full. Good. And they also don't look so much like they need some bedding on there. They do with the colour of the mattress, I guess, but it works quite well. Drop a sofa in the corner. Stick with the black one as it's one of the smaller ones. Get a table in the corner again. Stick with my favourite. Here we go. About right in the corner as far as we can go. As far as we can go without it clipping anyway. Make the most use of the space. Cooking station in here. It is our living space after all. And we'll stick another ice box in the corner, because you've got to have some refrigeration. Oh, yeah, need a stash box as well. So the dresser there is pulling double duty. Fortunately, that is definitely not going to fit. So, in with the wooden one. There we go. Got a chair in the corner. Oh, that one matches. Nice. On to a little bit of wall decoration. So, a couple of these signs again, they provide nice warming light. Avoid using the overly bright white ones that you have when you attach things to the ceiling, or some of the wall lights as well. So these are pretty good for that. That's why I use them so often. Mix up the patterns a little bit there. And rapidly running out of space already, so onto a few more details. Little radio on the top there. Stick a lamp in the corner. There you go. Again, it's clipping slightly into the top of this box here, so we'll flip it around. And then I'll change my mind about putting one there at all, since we've got light in that corner anyway. There we go. stick a magazine rack in just to give it a little bit more of a splash of colour and a little bit more lived-in look. Not going to fit in that corner, unfortunately. Not without the sofa overlapping the door. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be a problem when we do it this way around. So that we shall do. Bit more on the wall there. Go. And that gives us a nice little cosy living space. However, a full camp that does not make. So we're going to get some workbenches in shack number 2. The first thing, we'll just stick these down. Going to manage to squeeze everything in here apart from the cooking station, which we have in the other shack anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Shack shed, I should be calling it a shed. Drop these in for now. And given the confined space, this is a tight squeeze once again. But we will manage. I'm going to use this corner chemistry station again, so that's really where I would recommend starting when you put these in. Kind of gives you the largest object in place, or the second largest actually, but anyway, to work off of, and it basically has to go in that corner at this point, otherwise it doesn't really work. You might be able to squeeze it in this one, I suppose. But the power armor station, obviously, is what is going to cause us the biggest issue. So, we're going to have to squeeze this in much like we did in the train car. So we can still access the armor bench there, which is good. Now we've got just enough room in this corner to stick a weapons bench in there, but it'll have to be the blue one, because it doesn't stick out sideways quite as far as the spindly other one. I don't know what to call that other one. Shift this out of the way and just tweak it over just a little bit. Fortunately, you need to stand a bit further away to persuade that power armor station to go in. And we're going to squeeze this workbench in as tightly into the corner as we can. Make sure that we're using the space as best we can. So this is a very tight squeeze. Get that armor bench in. Yeah, the bellows are clipping through the floor a bit, with the feet of the power armor station rather, which is unfortunate, but on the other hand we managed to get all of this in one tiny little shed, so I really can't complain that much. However, workspace does need a stash box, so we'll go with the toolbox on the top there. A little bit of decoration on this blank wall. Stick with the safety first poster, as that makes sense. Put this out of the way so I can put a second poster up there as well. I decided to position this so that it lined up with the vertical post there on the wall, but I think in hindsight I might have been better off lining up with the middle of the workbench. Tough call, that one. Oh well. It looks good in the end anyway. So, don't really need a great deal of light in here, but I'm going to put one track light on the top there, just so it'll illuminate the power armor station. The other side being illuminated just fine by the Tinker's bench there. And we'll jump on to shack number 3, which is going to be our vendor shack. Stick a rug down, seeing as this one's not a workspace. Didn't put one in the other one, because the concrete floor makes more sense in our workshop. And we're going to be able to squeeze 3 of these in here, which is good. Bit of a pity you couldn't quite make it to 4, but it was a bit of a tight squeeze. Again. So with these, basically positioning one on each wall and making sure you've got a bit of room in the corner is the way to go. I tried sort of moving them around a bit, mixing things up a bit, but that ended up being the best thing to do. There's a couple of potential issues that might make the game think your items are floating when you come to try and replace the blueprint, so you need to watch out for them. First one being, you need to make sure that, as we'll see in just a second here, you haven't got the corners of these vending machines overlapping, because if they're one on top of the other, which this one is here, you see it pops up a little bit there, and we move this one, they'll both come with it. That might, I don't know because I didn't test it, cause you a little bit of an issue when you come to replace your blueprint, so something to think about. Get a little bit of decor in here. The other thing is the power generators are going to stick in the corner here. Now for the final build I ended up putting one in each corner and just having it directly linked via conduits to the individual generator. It was vending machine it was powering. But what I did right here was to just stack them and let the game decide where they sit, because they do look better, but as I say, when it came to blueprint and move it, the game was objectively convinced that at least one of those generators was floating, so hence my earlier advice of don't go more than 2 high and make sure you manually position the top one. That way, as you'll see in a moment, you can actually blueprint and replace the build. Because with the current setup, 3 high, I couldn't do that. Was very happy, however, that I was able to run a wire through that little window, though. Worked out quite well. It means we can run them using the conduits right around and power all 3 sheds off the one here, which is fine. So the items we've got inside of these are just lights, don't actually need individual power, unlike the vendors, which is cool. Need a conduit nearby. Get those connected up. I would actually recommend blueprinting these separately without connecting the wires to them, because that might cause problems as well. But I'll come back and disconnect them in a moment. As I say, with the problem we had with the generators, I ended up taking the stash box out and putting a generator in that corner. But I did manage to keep the chair that I'm going to drop in here in a moment. Figure if more than one person turns up, it gives them somewhere to wait for the machines, as there's not a great deal of room in here. There we go. Couple of conduits on here, which has gone a bit dark. So we can connect everything up. And job's good. So we'll disconnect these wires. You see I put a little bit of extra decoration out front. One can blueprint that easily enough if you like. Fortunately this wire doesn't want to play ball, so we'll have to take the conduit off and change it out. But we'll manage. Yeah, we'll put a little bit of extra decoration in so that you can see it's very easy to make this look like a more complete camp. And also put a couple of floors in the middle if you... foundation pieces if you happen to want to. Just make sure you only blueprint the sheds individually. I'll check on the left corner there, but we're fine. Go, shed number 1. Shed number 2. Till we get the whole structure. And number 3. Again, just make sure I haven't caught that guard post when I'm selecting the whole structure. Shouldn't do, but they are pretty close together, so best to be on the safe side. Let's get these dropped back in. We'll start with shed number 2, because it's the one that's actually going on the highest part of the ground. And then we'll position the other 2 off of it. Here's the first one. When it wants to stop colliding with the one we've already put down. And as we can see, we have a slight issue with number 3. So we've got 2 problems actually here. Firstly, that because I scrapped the whole shed, it stored the vending machines. So I'm now trying to put too many down. So we're going to scrap the ones we've got in storage. And now we should be able to replace it. Except that because I've got the generators stacked up 3 high in this particular one, I actually can't because it thinks those generators are floating. So, some trial and error later, I rebuilt this thing 3 or 4 times to make it work. Actually placing individual generators down did allow me to place it. So you can see we've got 1 in each corner rather than the stash box there. And we're actually able to replace the whole thing. There we go. Let's have a little look around the finished products. Do a quick tour of all 4 of these builds. So you can refresh yourself as to what they look like. Yeah, I'm quite pleased that we managed to squeeze 4 builds in here, and it didn't take too long. I don't think any of them took longer than about half an hour to do, which is really cool. As I say, they're all very easy to blueprint. You can pick them up and move them anytime you like, and have a nice finished looking, reasonably complete camp that you can just drop down anytime you happen to want to. I think for me, the train car is probably my favourite. But I do quite like how this red rocket's come out. We've got everything we need. It's got a nice garage vibe in here, apart from the bed in the corner anyway. Plenty of decoration, enough room to move around it. Access to all our benches. Yeah, nice finished looking place. And if you don't want to use the roller door, you can always just lock it and have the side door open. Either way, if you're going to let people in, I guarantee they're going to leave at least one of your doors open. So, the train car. See, dead simple from the outside, just looks like a basic train car. You can decorate it up a little bit more on there if you want, put a few bits on that end, for example. I'd be cautious about putting stuff on the sides. That might start to interfere with your placement. But as long as it's snapped onto the walls, you should be okay. However, I'm going to heat it up a little bit, take a little look inside. As I say, somewhat similar to what other people have done, but we're talking about a very sort of a 1x3 or so space here, so got to make do with the space you have available. Really pleased we've managed to cram everything in here, make it look pretty lived in, look pretty cool. Maybe do a little more in that back corner, but all in all, looks good. Let's see if I got to reassign anything to those displays on the wall, but all in all, looks pretty good. Remember to shut the door though. Quick look around the log cabin once again. Unfortunately I had to remove the red rocket to find enough space to build this, but there we go. Very, very easy to add a little bit more on the side afterwards if you like. Certainly speed up a larger camp build if you use these as sort of completed prefabs. But as I say, the idea was to have them work as standalone builds as well, so I think they do that quite nicely. Bit of a tight squeeze on the way in, but everything you could really need in here. Except possibly, as I say, the power armor station. That's easy enough to place one of those beside it if you so desire. With the build I did last time, I just put one foundation out aside, put the power armor station on that, and decorated it up, and that looked pretty good. So that would be a very easy option to just blueprint as well. Then you can just drop that next to it as well. Should be quick and easy. And the seedy sheds. So I actually did go ahead and blueprint these guard posts because they might be quite useful at some point in the future. Got little turret stands in there. Fireplace that they added a few weeks ago. Good shout to Ice Stella for suggesting dropping a little cooking station on the top there. Looks quite cool, it just completes the look of the fireplace out front. However, nice cozy little living space in here. I'd say not much room, but you don't really need much space if you're living on your own. Particularly proud with how this particular shack came out with all the workbenches in here. It was a very, very tight squeeze to fit everything in, but we did manage it. Didn't think that power armor station was going in, but we pulled it off, which is great. So, our fully decorated version of the vendor shack. So, thank you very much for watching, folks. Do hope you found that useful and informative. If you did, please do hit those buttons for me. It's always very much appreciated. Social media links, merch store, and channel memberships available via the description if you'd like to catch up with me over on there. The support is hugely appreciated. And if you get a chance, do make sure you catch one of the live streams as well. We're having a lot of fun with Fallout and playing a few other games on the side as well. So I do hope you'll join us for that. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.